Well, good afternoon, everyone, and Happy New Year. I am Sidney Katz. I'm no longer the president of the County Council. I'm the immediate past president of the County Council, and I represent the residents of District 3. And we're absolutely delighted that you're joining us for our Zoom meeting today. It's actually our 16th business briefing, which for us is difficult to believe, but it's been that many already. And of course, you know, what this country is going through in so many different ways, this week certainly not being any different, though there was a horrible situation that we just lived through this last couple of days. But we started the briefings because we wanted to see and to discuss how local businesses and nonprofits navigate through our new economic reality. And I'm delighted to welcome two wonderful guests, two friends of ours who are influential. And the first is Judy Stevenson, who's actually, she did the first episode with us. And so she's, I believe, the first person to actually come back again, and we thank her for that, to do another one. But she's the small business navigator for Montgomery County. And Daniel Parra, who's the Director of Diversity and Inclusion at the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation, also known as MCEDC. We've seen, Daniel has not done one of these programs, but we see Daniel all the time in various programs, when there was certainly more in person. Both guests will share their knowledge about the grants process and how to help businesses, especially small businesses, recover from the past year. We'll then take questions from our Zoom audience. If you certainly may send your questions to the chat box on the right of the screen. And before we start, I would like to publicly thank once again Laurie Edberg from my office, who really takes care of doing this program, and Susan Kennedy, who has been moderating from the very beginning and always does a marvelous job as well. And with that, Susan, let's please begin.
Thank you, Mr. Katz, and Happy New Year, everybody. It's great to be back for our 16th business briefing, and I've enjoyed every one of them and learned an awful lot about what's been happening and how our county's been so great in supporting our businesses during this, you know, treacherous time. It's been very, very difficult. So I'm going to first turn it over to Judy Stevenson and ask her to tell us a little bit about the Small Business Navigator and what their role has been during this pandemic.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Councilmember Katz. Really appreciate being here. As Susan and Councilmember Katz mentioned, I am the Small Business Navigator for Montgomery County. Normally, that means I'm available to help small businesses understand their relationship with county government. So it might be, do I need a license or a permit? Or I'm in the process with some county department of getting a permit or getting a license, and I'm having some issues. Or how do I position myself to get county contracts? So in the normal world, I'm helping small businesses make sure that they are doing all the things that they need to do with Montgomery County and helping them in those relationships. Since March, I have been almost entirely devoted to grant programs that the county has administered to assist small businesses, general small businesses, specific types of small businesses. So, I mean, it's really just been 110%, and I know that's impossible, but it really is true that we've been focused on what we can do to help businesses that are negatively impacted by this horrible pandemic.
And there have been so many of them, many of them. You've been very busy, I know. Daniel Parra from MCEDC, tell us a little bit about the business diversity and inclusion segment of that part of MCEDC. What do you do and what have you seen since the pandemic hit?
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Council Member Sidney Katz. Thank you, Laurie Edberg, for the invitation. And yes, in the same way that Judy mentioned, my normal role has been shifted since March 15 about, and it has to do that we serve small business communities in terms of connecting business to business. That is still happening. But on top of that, definitely we MCEDC has been in charge of some of the grants. So that is a shift of what we normally do. And the other shift is that normally we take care of different type of businesses, but this time we are taking care of very small businesses, even sole proprietors and very small businesses. So we have helped to run, handle, administer programs like the Local Production Fund, for instance, the 3R, the Restaurant Relief Program, and all of those grants have been handled in the middle of the pandemic and have very sounded outreach efforts to the community. And we are still waiting for more grants to come to the county, but I'm going to talk to that in a moment. So I think I'm going to stop right there. Just what we are doing right now in the middle of the pandemic and the role that we have played in before that. Mm-hmm.
Let's talk a little bit about that and these businesses that have been applying for help. Judy, first of all, will there be more grants coming down the pike? Because, you know, this is getting better. There is a light at the end of the tunnel with the vaccine on the horizon, or it's here and it's slowly being rolled out. But you know, these businesses are still, you know, quite restricted in what they can provide. What is happening in your department as far as shoring up more grant funding for these folks?
So I think businesses need to be really, really alert right now, because there are new programs that are getting ready to roll out, and the administration will be starting fairly soon. So to Daniel's point, 2 of them are state programs that will be administered locally. One is for hospitality companies, so hotels and other lodging places. That one, I think the county will work with a third party to administer that. But we'll be engaged in reviewing the applications and approving the grant amounts. The second one will be the restaurant, will be a reinfusion of money into the restaurant relief program. So the state is making more money available there. The state also has several different programs that will not be administered locally, but will be administered at the state level. So I encourage people there. The state has a really valuable tool called a Relief Wizard. So if you just search for Maryland Relief Wizard, I'm sorry, I can't speak, that will help people walk through the grant programs that could be applicable to their particular type of business. So it's a really helpful tool.
And how much money can you know, as a small business owner, former small business owner, the first question you always ask is how much money is available, and how fast could I receive it if I can get it?
Yeah, so the hospitality one, I think, is 6.2 million. Daniel, I don't remember how much is coming into the new restaurant program.
Yes, out of the $50 million that are new money coming from the state, $4.9 million are going to be to reinfusion, I like that word, to the restaurant relief program. And I can talk a little bit in a minute.
Those grants were up to $10,000, and the process was very simple.
Right. Mm-hmm.
My understanding is, even if you've gotten one, you are not precluded from getting another.
Okay.
Okay. The hospitality, the hospitality one hasn't been defined yet in terms, there's apparently some state formula that goes to how many rooms in the hotel and a grant per room. So that's all being worked out. I think the maximum on that one is like 60,000. But don't hold me to that. That's what it sounds like. But of course, you know, that's an industry that's been really hard hit. Mm-hmm. And I should also mention that there are federal programs. You know, they did finally approve the next COVID relief package. So there will be a reinfusion in the Paycheck Protection Program, and also the EIDL, which is Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, which previously had a grant component to it as well, but I haven't seen the final regulations on those. I do understand they're out, but I haven't been able to find them yet. Daniel, I'm not sure if you have, but
not yet.
Can you clarify, these are grants, so do they need to be repaid? Because, you know, we're looking at a lot. Clarify for the audience what the status is on that.
Those that are grants have not to be repaid. That is the norm. Probably part of the Judy mentioned are about the PPP loans that are forgivable. That is something that was at the federal level. But these grants that we are talking about are not to pay back.
So I should
I
say
was gonna say,
that,
just to clarify, those that are forgivable, when you take them, they are loans,
Loans,
but they
correct.
could be forgiven. If it's a grant, it's not a loan. You don't pay those back.
Uh-huh.
so I should say the very first program we did, the Public Health Emergency Grant Program, where we distributed, it was $20.9 million to small businesses in the county. It is a grant, but there are reporting requirements on that one. So one of the things I'm really concerned about is making sure that businesses understand that they need to be keeping very careful records of how they're using this grant money, because you will have to, for the public health emergency grant, at some point, probably in the not too distant future, the county will come to those businesses that received that grant and ask for a reporting. They're not allowed to use the money for the same expenses, right? So it can be the same kind of expense, but not the same exact expense. So we will ask for an accounting. So it's something the businesses need to be thinking about, and hopefully have been thinking about, because they will, like the Paycheck Protection Program as well, there are certain conditions they have to comply with in order for that to become a grant instead of a loan. So record keeping is really, really important.
That's a very,
And
very
I will add to Judy's, if you don't mind, Susan. One of the major complications or difficulties from business owners were at the moment of applying, one, probably lack of information on one hand. Second was not being prepared to apply. It is not just to go and sign an application. It has to do with make sure that you know what the requirements were. FEG is one of those, as Judy mentioned, because there is a requirement of reporting, and it requires as well that you keep track of what do you apply, because then people didn't know how to apply, but then they learn how to apply and apply to everything. So both sides of the rainbow are not so good. It is that one is lack of confidence and information. The other one is excess, and then you get confused. Where do I apply? How my reports are due? When are due? Etc. Etc. So it is important to let the business owners know that please put that in an. Actually, one of the chambers of commerce put in their website, and now it's available through the Small Business Work Group as well, a template to keep track of those loans and grants that you applied for, because that is going to allow you to know more about what you did with the money and where do you apply.
How has the response been from the multicultural community, the business community there? Have they had an easy enough time navigating through this and getting the funding and support that they need?
I believe that it has been, from March to now, there has been a lot of efforts for many organizations, the government, the county council. Everyone has put an effort, the media, on promoting what programs are available, etc. So I believe that that effort has been very good. In terms of administration, of course, as time went by, it was better and better and better. And I can say that right now, for instance, the last grant that was the restaurant relief grant that we handled at MCEDC, we were requested to handle that in less than a month and disburse the money before December 31st. So it is record. It was more than 1,000 applicants. It was $8.2 million, and we were oversubscribed, but it was handled in a way that the business owners went to holidays with the money in their bank. So it is important to highlight that from difficulties at the beginning to very effective way to do and handle that in a benefit of the business owners.
And I think it should be noted that part of the concern that the county had was that the monies for the CARES Act had to be spent by December 31st. We've since now, because of the new legislation, I guess it's December 31st of 2021 is the new date. Not that we've gotten additional money for local governments, but the new date that we can that we can actually work and then work with FEMA and other organizations from the federal government. But for the federal programs, is there a website? Does the website always stay the same? Is it different for each individual grant? How does that work?
Well, I think to my way of thinking, the best first stop is the Small Business Administration, because they have a very centralized web presence that will allow businesses to look at all the different federal programs that are available. So that, to me, that's my go-to.
Mm-hmm. And I would like to suggest to business owners in Montgomery County and the state in general that, and I have to commend the work that your office, Judy, has done with the business portal. They have collected all this information and put together federal, state, and local programs and regulations. We did the same thing at MCEDC. So I would like to include those two websites because they are very updated. They are thoroughly updated every week. And you can find all these programs on top of the SBA that you mentioned, Judy.
And back to, if I could also add on the outreach to diverse communities, I would like to say that the county really did an extraordinary effort to build a new coalition of resources that included partners like MCEDC and our Latino Economic Development Center, the SBDC, SCORE, the local chambers of commerce, but also non-traditional types of channels through community groups and that use different applications, listservs and WhatsApp and all of these things to actually establish channels of communication to those communities that we don't always talk to directly. So I'm hoping that we can, when the vaccines start rolling out, I want to try to merge what we did with the Census 2020 messaging, which was driven very strongly through our community engagement cluster, our Office of Community Partnerships, and the outreach we did on the grants, so that we have a really comprehensive communication strategy to a broad cross-section of the county residents and businesses.
If you have a chance in between questions, we have somebody in the audience asking if you could type some of those websites into the chat so they can have that information. That would be helpful if you're not answering a question. But my next question is, Judy, we had piggybacking on what Sydney just said about the deadline being extended. Do we have a bit of money left in some of these other programs, and are they still open for folks to apply to? And if so, what are they? We're all spent?
We don't have any active applications at the county right now, and I don't think EDC is accepting applications either. Okay. We're wrapping up the most recent program, which is the Reopen program. We've got 7.5 million that's been committed out of a bucket of about 9 million, but we still have outstanding applications to get through. I don't think any decisions have been made. If there's anything left in that, it'll, you know, as we've done these grant programs, any amounts left in the program have been rolled over to the next program, if you will. So I don't think any decisions have been made because we haven't actually completed the program.
And I can add, if you don't mind, that to make sure that we have this $4.9 million, there's some formalities to fulfill. There's agreement that the county has to sign with the state. And then it has to go through the county council to make the decision who is going to handle the program, etc. But I think that is pretty much something that could happen into a month, the next month, a period of time. And as Council Member Katz mentioned, this is something that is going to be more flexible in terms of time, etc., etc.
Okay, that's good.
And that's what's also so very necessary. I mean, in some cases, as much as we try to communicate, and we do, but not everybody communicates the same way. There are people that don't necessarily go to a website. I mean, it's less and less over the years, but that's what happens. So we have to try our very, very best to make sure that people are even aware of the programs. And in many cases, the people who truly need these programs the most are not aware of them because they do business in a different way than others would do business. So But I can also tell you that what I have seen personally and people that I've chatted with, that in many cases, this is the lifeblood that has allowed them to stay in business. I mean, and you're talking about people whose lives literally are on the line. I mean, their jobs have been lost. They're trying their best. They're working harder to make less money. And so it's really such a tragic story that we're dealing with, but we're trying our best to help out as best we can.
Mhm.
We have been impressed, though, we will say, the ingenuity and resilience of so many of our businesses. We've had the opportunity to meet a lot of these business owners in Montgomery County who have very successfully pivoted during this crisis. And some people are even making more money than they made before, just coming up with these incredible ideas. Judy and Daniel, both talk a little bit about what you've seen in that regard and what types of businesses have kind of come out of a result of this pandemic.
Judy, you want me to go first?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah, local production fund was one of those opportunities to learn what business owners have done to pivot their businesses. Actually, I have to commend Montgomery Community Media and other social media venues that help us to promote them. One of those is a lady that was a fashion clothing company that transformed their business all entirely to make masks. And it was very successful at that moment because they were very well needed. And at that moment in April, you couldn't find anywhere. Now you can find everywhere, but at that time were so difficult. The other successful story has to do with this event planner company that used their laser equipment to make face shields. At that moment was very important. And the pivot of that even allowed him to hire more personnel and have their business surviving. So I can go on examples of that. Breweries making alcohol at that time, etc. So the list is very big. So creativity, resiliency, and as you said, Susan, many of them even making more revenue than before because of their positive thinking and creativity.
And the assistance that they gave to the community. I mean, for the breweries, and then I read somewhere just recently that there's now they're looking at, they had to get a permit or a tax situation or something. I just read that. I don't know how correct that is, and that's after the fact. But I mean, when we needed them the most, they were there with hand sanitizer, you know.
Right. They step up, yeah.
So I think that we actually also should just look at our restaurant community that was able to pivot to curbside and takeout. And, early on, I don't know if you all remember this, but early on, restaurants were actually selling meat to the community because they had a different supply chain than the than the grocery stores had. So people might not be able to get something at the grocery store that the restaurants were able to get, and we're just selling directly to the public. I also talked to a business owner recently who does basketball clinics. And actually has a contract with the county to do some recreational stuff, which of course hasn't really been happening. So his company's pivoting to look at athletic wear. So can they sell clothing instead of clinics? And of course, many businesses have transitioned to online. So whatever they did previously in person, like the fitness centers, have moved to doing things online for a long time. So, some of the things that have changed because of this are actually good things. Mm-hmm. People have learned that a lot of our work can be done remotely. I mean, just think about what the positive impact on traffic that might be long-term.
Just look at this, what we're doing.
Exactly. I will say the downside to this is that there is no time between meetings. You just click off and click on. Right. But it is more efficient, right? And it's less impact on the environment. So, there are some things that I think businesses have learned from this that they will continue to use going forward to help them be more efficient and more profitable.
Well, and I agree with you. And I think in some cases, not in all cases, but in some cases, we're not going to go back to doing business the way we used to do business. I mean, there's the fact that we're doing these briefings this way now. Even when we can go back and actually have people in the same room, we certainly should still do them this way as well. It shouldn't be just one way. We should try our best to do things in many different ways to try to get as many people to be aware of what's going on. So I do think that's a positive.
Ironically, before this happened, we were in the final stages at the county of implementing a program called Business Connect, by which we were trying to do training and counseling in our regional service centers throughout the county so that we could bring these resources to businesses closer to where they are. Well, immediately after the pandemic hit, our partners who are delivering this training went to virtual. And I will tell you, the number of attendees going to these virtual training and workshops is tremendous.
Yeah.
Many more people than ever participated in in-person training classes. So that's another thing that I think is really positive.
Well, go ahead, Daniel. I'm sorry.
No,
it is just to point something that Judy mentioned, and it has to do with even people that is not necessarily local. They are coming from everywhere in the world just to learn what programs could be or regular things for display and all that type of things. And I would like to add that we at MCEDC created a MoCo Marketplace, that it is part of what you are mentioning right now. And it is how important it is to be online and to be with your presence in the World Wide Web. That we don't use the www anymore, but it is so important because your business is in the best display that you can have. So now our work has been helping them to show the best of their business and make sure that they go through all the process to make sure that they have the sales that they require, that they need, and the revenue that they are looking for. So that is part of what we are doing with the last part of the 3R grant that we have given. Just to don't forget to mention that to everyone.
I do have to pop in with a question from the audience. We have a question that is there any real startup funds to register and trademark in the state of Maryland? So I guess if somebody creates something and they want to trademark it, is there funding available to go through that process? Do we know if that's there?
That would not be in my.
Yeah,
Daniel,
probably go to the state. The state of Maryland.
At the state level,
Yeah, at the state level. But that is a good question because some people are coming up with some brand new ideas. Before the show started, we talked about city bonfires, and that was a brand new idea, which I'm sure they wanted to get a patent and a trademark on. So yeah, it's something to think about.
I should also say that as part of we're trying to look forward. You know, we're so caught up right now in the immediate, but my real feeling is that we're going to have a lot of businesses starting in 3 to 6 months because that's what people do. They start businesses in economic challenging times, right? So we're exploring ways that we can provide a higher level of technical assistance to businesses because, you know, like for instance, historically, we haven't really provided legal services. Well, we're exploring ways, how could we subsidize legal so that people can establish a business in a more solid and sustainable way from the start. So we are looking at, and you know, grants are another area. Grant writing for some of our more biotech types of companies could also be an area to explore.
So the best advice moving forward, we're almost out of town these couple of next couple of months, is to pay attention to the websites that you've put in the chat, that folks should keep up at looking with those, and also pay attention to any news that the county puts out or social media or press releases in regards to additional funding available for these businesses.
Absolutely. And I should put a plug in for Chambers of Commerce because businesses are so busy that it's really hard for them to keep track of these things that are coming along, and Chambers can be a really good resource in helping them stay on top of this.
Okay.
And I'd like to mention as well the importance of the Chambers of Commerce in terms of connecting with other businesses that have the experience of something that is new for you as a business owner, but they already have, and collectively, they are so powerful in a way that collectively they are able to find solutions to different things. So yeah, that is so important as well.
Okay, well, Mr. Katz, our time is up already, as usual. It went very quickly. I'm going to turn it back to you to close us out.
Well, thank you very, very much. I always say this is the fastest half an hour in Montgomery County when we have these. It's always interesting and always fun to have the chats. Judy, I did see, and I'm sure they would like your information as well, Daniel. If you could put your contact information, email address, and so that people can get a hold of us. And obviously, anyone that wants additional information, please feel free to reach out to my office. We'll certainly figure out where Judy and Daniel are, and we'll get them for you as well. So, but thank you all very, very much, Susan and Laurie and everyone. These events, these briefings, candidly, are not just good for the public. There's always very good for me, because it reminds us of what we're doing and having to think about the additional things that we need to be doing as well. So thank you all very, very much for being with us. Please continue to be safe and be well. And we will see you again, I guess, next month is when we take this up again. So thank you both, Judy and Daniel, as well as Susan, for everything that you've done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Happy New Year.